Good afternoon and welcome to the National Black MBA HBCU Crash Course. My name is Brandon Graham and I'm the University Relations Manager here at the National Black MBA Association. Today we're so excited to be able to partner and cultivate the relationship with Chevron on today and to have representatives from their company to speak toward their HBCU experience and also what it means to be an asset to the Chevron company. On today's call, we have Roderick Green. We also have Jamila Muhammad, and we have Terrence Baptiste, a part of this call on today. And so I would like for them to go ahead and take an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then we'll play a short snippet as pertains to who Chevron is as a company and what they do.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Good to be here with you today. My name is Jamila Muhammad. I'm currently the Senior HR Manager for Mid-Continent Business Unit. And that business unit supports our assets in the Permian across Texas and Mexico. So a little bit about myself is I was born in Chicago, but I was raised in Memphis. I went to University of Minnesota and got my master's degree in HR and industrial relations. And that's where my relationship started. From there, I got an internship on the HR development program and then had a couple of years on rotational assignments where I got to go to places like Richmond, which is in California, Rockies in Venezuela. And when I wrote off that program, I was a business partner in various organizations that we have. And I also got an opportunity to project and support our core groups. From there, I got a really great opportunity to support CHRO as her advisor. And I was the HR manager for supply chain, and that led me to the role I'm in today. And I know one of our topics is about how do you interview company. And one of the biggest things I think, when I think back to my own experience, is ask a question before you leave that interview of the panelists. Why did you choose this company when you interviewed, and what did you say? And I think that's the way to kind of kick off that conversation. I'll pass it to my colleague, Terrence Baptiste, to tell a little bit about him.
Thanks, Jamila. Before I go too far, can everyone hear me? Can I get thumbs up? No feedback? All right. Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're calling me from. My name is Terrence Baptiste, and I'm so very happy to be here today with you and my colleagues from Chevron. Before I tell you a little bit about myself, I want to start out by first congratulating all of you for being at this stage in your journey. Regardless of how you got here, it's an amazing testament of your fortitude. I'm going to pause from time to time if I get a little bit of feedback. I'd also like to acknowledge your presence here today is a reflection that each of you are being very, very purposeful about how you go about this next journey in your life. This interview process, as focused as we are today on this current process, is one that will continue with you for some time, and hopefully it'll become a little bit more clear as I talk a little bit about my journey. So I'm from New Orleans. I'm a graduate of Southern in New Orleans. Both of my parents graduated from SUNY, as we commonly call it, with degrees in accounting. I was not very creative. I followed them. I've got a degree in accounting. I've been working for Chevron for 35 years. My entry into Chevron was a bit of an unconventional one, if you would. I was a teenager working in the mailroom between college semesters, and I needed a summer job to make money, to be honest. This was not some fancy internship. This was, Chevron had a need for people. They needed them fast, didn't know how long they would need them. But it was my first time making really money. You can imagine how different Chevron was 35 years ago. There weren't a whole lot of us, to be very honest. There weren't a whole lot of people of color. And the few that were there were in entry-level positions, but not all of them. You know, they were exceptions, but for the most part, it was a different company than it is today. My interview process started in that mailroom. I asked questions about the company, specifically the people that looked like me, not exclusively. And it started to paint a picture of a company where I wanted to stay. Unbeknown to me, people were asking me questions, And I honestly was not aware that I was going through an interview process myself at that time. At some point over the summer, I decided not to go back to school, not just because I wanted to continue to make money, but because I saw a pathway for myself. And this interview process for me went on for years, really did. And unfortunately for you, I believe you got a much shorter period of time for this interview process, but please pay attention that this will be an ongoing process. Things that you learn today will carry forward for a period of time. And I personally went from being a mail clerk, working in accounting, to managing supply chain organizations for segments of our business over the years. And now I've got the exciting role to manage our supplier diversity program that's driving not only outcomes for Chevron, but driving outcomes for the communities where we live and work. Again, use this interview process to determine not only where you want to work, where you want to stay over a period of time. So I'll turn it over to Roger Green, our General Manager for Investor Relations.
Terrence, thank you for that. And I'm always amazed at your stories. It's an awesome story to know as well. Likewise, thank you for the opportunity to engage with each of you today. I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to spend with us. So that's something that we don't take lightly. I'm originally from Louisiana, born in Texas, but my family's from Louisiana. Father was in the military for over 20 years. So it afforded me and my older brother the opportunity to live and grow up overseas, primarily in West Germany, and then finish out my high school and college in the US. So I graduated from Grambling State University with my bachelor's degree in accounting, and later I received my MBA from the University of Houston. I started back in Texaco roughly 24 years ago in Houston. I went through the Chevron Texaco merger. I was on the finance development program at Chevron, first class post the merger, which afforded me a myriad of opportunities from a finance perspective as well as a business perspective to take different roles and different responsibilities that actually grew my awareness of the actual company itself, but at the same time, put me on this development journey. And I would say early in my career, something around mentorship and sponsorship, I thought it was pretty academic, but later came to appreciate that number of situations that I was being placed in was somewhat of a testing and a training and development ground for me. And as I executed those fairly successfully, I ended up getting more and more responsibility. So as Terrence mentioned, my current role is a general manager of investor relations. I've been in this role a little over a year now. It is a very, very great role that I'm thoroughly enjoying this role. Prior to this role, I was the general manager of downstream and chemicals, fuel and lubricants business. That included everything in the US as well as our Latin America portfolio. And then just prior to that, I was overseas in the UK and Scotland supporting our Europe business unit there. Each of these opportunities that I've had have actually grown, challenged me to give better appreciation for the sector. My early days in Houston, I was very, very involved with campus recruiting for National Association of Black Accountants, University of Texas, as well as University of Houston. So I really appreciate where you all are in your journey. Happy to be able to share some of my experiences and some of the things that I've seen work really well with you. So once again, thank you for your time and your attention, and I will turn it over to Brandon.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing your amazing backgrounds and your stories of just a short bit of how you got into where you are today. And so for the amazing crash course on today, we want to make sure that all questions and statements are placed in the Q&A feature on Zoom. So that way we can keep track of who's asking questions. And if you are a student, please add your first and last name and what institution you are representing, because we want to make sure that we shout out all of our amazing HBCUs that are on the call on today. And so as we jump into the Q&A, today's focus is about the companies are interviewing too, and also understanding that there's a two-way street component of interviewing for the job itself, but also interviewing the company as you're looking to find out, is this company or organization the best fit for you? And so as we have this dialogue today, be thinking of what it means to join an organization, its values, its characteristics, and how that aligns to your overall focus and your career set. So as we jump into questions, Roderick, the first question is for you. What is the best way to determine if a company is the right fit for you? How did you approach that early on in your career? And how do you approach it now as a seasoned professional?
Brandon, I appreciate the question. And it's, for me, it's kind of twofold. If you look at the company itself, you look at the various positions and roles they're doing, but a lot of my view of opportunities, the world, and so forth was based on my background. As I mentioned, my dad was in the military, so I'm a very principally based person. So for me, it all starts with you. It really starts with, what do you want? And are you being reasonable about that aspiration, but at the same time challenging yourself? So I tend to not get so caught up into talking about jobs. I really focusing on how do we build careers, because it's easy to go out and get a job, so that's pretty straightforward. But how do you build a career? It starts with making sure you're understanding and evolving and developing on one side. I do believe there's a respectful way, very intentional about everything that you do. So number one, definitely speak up and let those desires and those aspirations be known. But at the same time, when you're evaluating, say, positions or roles or opportunities, I really tend to break it down really into three areas. And when I look at it from a development journey standpoint, the number one starts with, what skill sets are you building this role relative to where you're going? And is this role or is this opportunity going to give you more exposure to people that are going to be evaluating your effectiveness and or subject matter content that's going to help sustain and grow as you continue to grow your area of responsibility within the company or business that you're working? And then at the same time, is this a fixed role? Does this role have a little bit of headroom, which is going to give you the opportunity to in advance? So too many times I run across folks that are busy jumping from job to job to job, but here again, it's, you're doing all this with the means to what? So how do you connect the dots? How do you traverse, what is my ending point? And throw some milestones in there, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I would like to be at this level, and then think about, well, what do I need to do to get there? What exposures, what experiences do I need to have? So here again, it's about being intentional. It's about understanding what you want. But then if you peel all that back, then it goes back to, what company will allow me and afford me that opportunity to shake and grow in that way. So I'll stop it there, but we can definitely circle back with more details. But I appreciate the question, Brandon.
Absolutely. And Terrence and Jamila, if you all would like to answer that as well too, as it pertains to, how do you identify if a company is the right fit for you? And I know for students that are in undergrad or in graduate school and they're looking for employment in this next chapter of their lives and their journeys, how did you go about identifying which companies really had the best fit as pertains to your moral compass and what it is that you wanted out of your career?
I'll start this out, if you don't mind. Can you still hear me okay, Brandon?
Yes, I can.
Recognizing my situation is very different. I've only worked for Chevron my entire life. So for me, it was a continued validation that this was the company that I wanted to be at. And I believe many people will go through that same process. Understanding and continuing to validate that the company culture matches your personal value systems, I think is going to be really important. A lot of people will talk about financial benefits, there are a lot of things that go into this equation, but don't dismiss the fact that you need to be happy on a day-to-day basis, working and making money and understanding all the things that go into that.
Awesome. Jamila?
Thanks. Can you hear me, Brandon?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I agree with Terrence. A big thing for me, especially when I was interviewing, was going to all the websites for the different companies that I was interested in to understand what their company values were. And before I even looked at their values, I wrote down what I thought mine were. And so I really tried to match what my values personally were, on the things I was interested in, on the things that fulfill me personally, not just professionally, to see if it aligned with the company values were. And then I also attended a lot of info sessions. And if you take time out to go to the info sessions that companies host, it's another good way before you interview or even say that you want to interview, to kind of fill out their culture and what they're about. So those are two things, or two tools that I used when I was evaluating what company to work for.
Awesome, awesome. And so I know that we have a video as pertains to Chevron, and just giving our audience a bit more insight to who they are as a company. And I think you all have shared that through your journeys of why you chose Chevron, but I think now we can give a visual to add to that. Jasmine.
What's on the horizon? The answers lie beyond the roads we know. We recognize that energy demand is growing and the world needs lower carbon solutions to keep up. At Chevron, we're working to find new ways forward through investments and partnerships in innovative solutions like renewable natural gas from cow waste, hydrogen-fueled transportation, and carbon capture. We may not know just what lies ahead, but it's only human to search for it.
Awesome. So it's only human to search for it. And so as you all, went on your search, I know everybody's had a different experience as it pertains to garnering the role that they're in now. But as you had an opportunity to be in this role, what has it looked like in terms of DEI focuses at Chevron? Have you all been a part of any groups, networking opportunities, community service? We know now that we are all having to be more socially focused and conscious as pertains to what's happening outside of the walls within the companies that we work in. And students, of course, are looking at how they can be active and engaged. So what does that look like for you all as professionals at Chevron?
I know it's a really important question, a really important aspect of time you're spending at work. You're spending a lot of time, quite frankly, outside of your home. So you definitely want to make sure that that's in the public space. One thing that really impressed me with Chevron was the amount of time and effort that they spend into the area of community engagement or social responsibility. We have an overall theme of wanting to bring people home the same way they come to work, which is in one piece. So that's kind of our safety culture. But another aspect of that is making sure that, we evolve and develop our communities that we live and work in. So whereas we're out exploring resources and bringing those to market, we want to make sure that we finish with that life cycle, that existing community in that area is in a better place than it was when we first started. So one example that I really I appreciate is our humankind effort. It's where we actually partner with various agencies throughout a given city or location where we actually have operations or work. And there's company paid time where you're able to link up, not just during a given month or period, but all throughout the year, and partner with these various groups, giving back to communities, whether that's food banks, whether that's within schools or other areas. So it's a good opportunity to really get that self-fulfillment, things that you would regularly be doing weekend, covered during work hour. At the same time, there's a number of affinity groups, employee networks as well. So while you're here again, spending a lot of time with other people, you can kind of associate yourself with folks that have similar interests and desires, or even stretch yourself and learn about other aspects of the world in terms of different groups, different demographics, some of these other clubs and organizations or affinity groups that we have in Chevron. So here again, it's one thing to talk social responsibility. It's one thing to talk about community engagement, but to actually have a company that's spending time and money and allowing the employees to embrace those opportunities is really huge.
Awesome. Terrence or Jamila, you all have anything you want to add to that?
It's just a really quick response. Roger did a great job of giving an overview of Chevron experience. The one thing we just will continue to remind everyone that's considering employment, whether it's at Chevron or any, ask those appropriate questions so that you can get that perspective that Roger just gave you from those companies if you don't know that they exist, if you don't know that these organizations, that these structures, that these cultures exist in companies like Chevron, you won't know to ask. So hopefully we've given you some information to start to, again, build up that list of questions for you to intelligently find out if that company is a perfect fit for you.
And I'll just quickly add, like, to what Roderick mentioned about our employee networks. Like, this week is our Black Employee Leadership Forum that's going on right now for our company, where leaders and employees from across the company are traveling to California just to talk through issues that affect the Black community and education and leadership and wellness. So it's really important that, like Terrence said, the companies that you want to work for, you ask those questions. And if they have issues answering them, that's an indicator too, right? So sometimes what's not said is even more of an indicator than what is. So I would pay attention to that as well.
And Jamila, you brought forth that next question with that last statement, as pertains to asking companies questions, and how they respond to that, really reverberates and resonates, whether or not that should be the place for you. What do you wish you would have done differently within your first interview, within your career? And Jamila, we can start off with you, that question. Differently.
So a couple of things, and one is really a set thing. And so I'll caveat this by saying, I know this is not in every situation, but in most situations, when you're going to interview for a position, I think it's important to understand that in that room, the people that are interviewing you, they want that to be the best interview of the day. They want you to bring value to their company. They want you to be an asset to their team. And sometimes we go into interviews like they're obstacles, instead of thinking about them as opportunities to share your experience, to share your story, to share what you can bring to the table. And just that mind switch, if I would have had that at the beginning of my career, would have helped, because I would go into interviews and be like, oh, I gotta do all these things, instead of looking at it as an opportunity. So I would say, first, switch that mind frame. And then the second thing, when you're interviewing with any company, if you feel like you didn't fully answer a question, or you didn't answer it as well as you wanted to answer, then I think it's perfectly okay to say, hey, can I answer that question again? Or can I rephrase what I was trying to say? Remember that is your time. That interview time is your time. And so you want to leave there really feeling like you asked all the questions you wanted to ask, and you answered in the way that represents you. So those are a couple of things that I would have kind of probably done a little bit differently at the beginning of my career.
Awesome. What about yourself, Terrence? In terms of,
can you hear me? Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute and give me a little bit difficulty.
Okay, it's all right.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Surely. So if you think about my experience, I did have several opportunities to interview within Chevron, and I've actually been on several hiring committees. And what I've seen, the mistake that I've made over the years, and I've seen the mistake that others have made, that they've been so focused on that particular position, or selling themselves and bringing their attributes, and not asking the right questions about the job itself and how their attributes fit in with the larger scope of the job and the larger scope of the company. So, I think there's a tendency, especially when I think about myself as a younger person, it's hard to remember those days. I was really, really focused, and I did not have that broader thought pattern to think about company culture, the company's overall objectives of that particular role that I was applying for. So my advice would be to really think don't think narrowly when you're asking, when you're interviewing, when you're presenting yourself. Think about the broader opportunities or the broader goals of the company or the particular department that you're applying with. And I think you will start to differentiate yourself from others.
Awesome. Roger, what about yourself?
Just one quick thing to really add to what Terrence offered. For me, it's really looking at the consistency of the company. It's one thing to say something, but it's something else to walk the talk and to do that in a consistent manner. So I would advise folks to really evaluate those management teams, those leadership teams, look at the consistency of where that firm has been over time, and let that be another data point that resonates or may not resonate with you.
Awesome. So we have a few questions in the Q&A, and I want to jump to some of those. And so one of the questions that we have, it definitely goes into, especially in this time period, as you interview the company, they're interviewing you. But how has Chevron handled the post-COVID workspace? Different generations have different feelings about strictly working the office versus fully remote versus a hybrid situation. With so many different wants and needs from the workforce, how is Chevron addressing them without technically being disruptive as we are working through a pandemic? And this question came from Jason Clark. And we can have any of you all jump in as pertains to how is it being virtually?
I can say a few things, and then Terrence or Roderick, maybe you can add on to it. So Chevron, one of the things Roderick mentioned earlier is that Chevron has a focus on safety. So during the pandemic, especially when COVID first announced, we acted immediately and folks did start working from home. Since then, we returned to the office, working a hybrid schedule. So in most locations, we work in the office Tuesday through Thursday, and Monday and Friday, we still work remotely. And we feel like that gives us the best of kind of our culture, where we have the flexibility, but we also believe in in-person collaboration due to the nature of our business. It's really important that we go where the work is being done, especially a lot of our physical assets. So it's important that we're in person, but also it's where innovation kind of takes place as well. So we feel that the hybrid schedule that we're currently on, the hybrid model, is what's best for our company presently.
Awesome. Terrence or Roderick?
I'll briefly add, and this is really following up on Roger's comment earlier, pay attention to the companies over a period of time. Chevron paid attention to the feedback of their employees. When we landed on this particular model, this was just not Chevron executives making decisions. They were very, very purposeful to get feedback from the employees, and we landed on a model that worked for everyone. It worked for the company and it works for the employees.
Yeah, really 2 points. One, we didn't have 6 months, a year to be prepared to go into this pandemic. It was placed upon us. So the leadership team had to be really, really responsive and adaptive to the current situation. So one area that I was really appreciative of was the evolving space of ensuring that folks were working safely. We work safely in the office space, which was traditionally the office or the workplace. But the leadership team across various segments of our business made sure that employees had the necessary equipment to continue to be safe wherever the new work location was going to be. And we didn't know, was that going to be a week, a month, 6 months? We really didn't know going in. So the adaptive and quick to respond was pretty impressive. And we are continuing to evolve and learn about this. So Terrence mentioned the feedback. That's a very live and real thing, not just where you're working at, but how are you doing? How's your well-being? And we're still learning. Jamila talked about the work schedule itself. Some are coming in operations on a daily basis. Others, we've learned over 2 years that necessarily isn't the case, that has to be. So this thing called FaceTime is, I really think, a thing of the past. It's all about productivity. It's all about well-being. Folks leveraging technology can really be pretty productive and have a good balance between work and life, and not necessarily have to come to that thing that was traditionally known as the workplace.
Awesome. So we have a question from Walat Dennis, a graduate student at Thunderbird School of Global Management at Arizona State University. How well is capacity building for personal and career growth encouraged at Chevron? And if one personally develops themselves through self-sponsored trainings in line with the company goals, does that help one's career progression within the company? And so I'll pull that together. Have you all had an opportunity to grow yourselves personally or via career company opportunities? And has that helped you grow? Has it helped you grow through your career at Chevron?
I can start us off.
Yes, Roderick, you want to start us off since you're unmuted?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brandon. So yes, taking the initiative and taking advantage of whether it's internal development and or trainings is always great. I can speak to what's happening at Chevron or external avenues of being trained and developed as well. Throughout my career, there have been a number of opportunities I mentioned. I was afforded the opportunity to be sponsored and supported through the finance development program, which really exposed me to different segments of our globally integrated business, from upstream to the corporate office, internal audit, and some flashes of space as well. During that period of time, a boom merger, big merger integration team, system implementations, going through the finance development program, the company was still shifting and evolving. A point in time to where they put kind of a freeze on movement as we were optimizing the organization. So I figured, okay, I don't want to stand still. I want to keep my marketability fresh. That's what we're taught to do. So I went back and got my MBA at that time. And the company totally supported that. I was doing a Friday, Saturday deal with the executive MBA. And they totally, supported that. The work-life balance was there. But the one thing that I also appreciate is along that journey of having different training opportunities, development opportunities, I had regular check-ins with my leaders around my career development plan. And that is a real thing at Chevron. There is a document, there is a process that gives you that opportunity to engage with leaders and express what the desires are. So going back to what I mentioned earlier when I started, it's about being intentional. There's a way to express your desires from a human perspective. And I'm a fundamental believer in person's personal desire. So it's great that we have that opportunity to have these checkpoints with our leaders, whether it's once a year or multiple times a year, plan, and have action items that they're going to support you in, as well as action items that you're going to execute on to make sure you're making progress towards this goal.
Awesome. Terrence, what about yourself? How have you been able to leverage other opportunities to help you in your career?
Sure, you've kind of heard my starting points. So very early on, Chevron encouraged me, financially supported me to get my undergraduate degree, my MBA degree, my supply chain certification. So one thing I want to really point out to leverage Roderick's comment is that Chevron manages their employees on a functional basis. I won't get too detailed about it, but at the highest level, we can think about, we manage the segments of our organization, such as finance as a finance function, safety, as an HES function, health, safety, environmental function, drilling engineers as a function. Each of those functions develops specific learning and development programs to ensure that their employees are growing throughout their career. But to your original question of if an employee decided to do things on their own, I have seen many times that employees have decided to get education outside of their current path that they're on and take a completely different path at Chevron, and they've been very, very successful in doing so. So the answer to that question is yes. There's several different paths. You can follow your path underneath your specific function that you work on, or you can decide on your own to take a different educational path, and it will be valuable. Sure, give you additional opportunities to do things differently.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add that in my career, Chevron is reimbursed for certifications, not just getting your degree, but just if you want to, refresh on some certain skills. And also, it was mentioned earlier on the call that it's not just about your next job. A lot of times it's building skill sets or having experiences. So working internationally is a learning in and of itself. And Chevron afforded me that opportunity early on in my career when not really any HR development program were offering those types of international experiences. So those are the things that I looked for. And also from a just more company perspective, what I really appreciate is a part of our career development process is leaders take into consideration not just business need, but also what's your personal situation in life and what are your development needs? What skills do you need to build when they're helping you kind of craft your career plan? So that's something that is to me continues to be motivating throughout my career here.
Awesome. So we have another question, from Reginald Dominique from Clark Atlanta University, an MBA student. He says, interviewing can be very intimidating. Besides doing your research on the company, what are other ways you can successfully prepare yourself for an interview? So I know some students, and if you've seen all the Hollywood movies, people have these rituals that they do before the interviews to prepare themselves. But what has been your best practices as you all prepare for interviews?
Can I answer that? It's because
Yeah.
I have two pretty tactical things that I think everybody should do, because I've interviewed many people. And the thing that to me trips people up that I want to like yell from the mountaintops is have command of your resume. When you're walking through your resume, a lot of people sometimes kind of stumble. And I always tell people, when the first question is tell me about yourself, tell me about your kind of career path. That's your ace in the whole question. You know that answer. You know your experience. So have command of your background. That's like your easy question. So make sure you try not to stumble through that. And the second thing is typically frame your answers in a way that you actually answer the question that's asked. So a common method that folks use is the STAR method, which is, describing the situation, what the task was, what your action was, and what the result is. Do not ever leave out what your action was. Too many times people answer questions, they don't talk about what they did and what the result was. So please make sure you do that and study before interviews, because it'll not make you so nervous, because interviews can be nerve-wracking, right? You don't need people, but if you know your background, if you take time to prepare, and if you put yourself in a good mind space, then you're just going in to have a conversation about you.
Awesome. Terrence?
Just quickly add on. Calibrate your mindset, as Janella mentioned. Remember that these interview panelists want you to be successful. And I think many people get so nervous because they think they're trying to get caught up, but they really want you to be successful. And also consider and remember that, we know we're being interviewed. Times have changed. People are being very selective about who they work for, and we understand that. So we are not only interviewing you, but we also know that we're being interviewed. So I think it kind of helps to calibrate folks' mindset and hopefully calm some of the nerves.
Absolutely. Roderick?
Okay, you did a great job. I'll pass Brendan. Jamila and Terrence, they covered it well.
Okay, got it. Awesome. And so that leads us to the focus of right now. We know DEI is a buzzword that is taking place post some very jarring social events throughout the US and throughout the world rather. And so how do we identify and recognize whether or not a company is truly doing the work around diversity, equity, and inclusion? And so how has that felt within your careers, not just at Chevron, but as professionals, period? Has that echoed via mentorship by other Black professionals? Has your HBCU network helped you advance and cultivate relationships? So how has that looked in your career as pertains to DEI at Chevron and also within your career as total?
I'll start us off, Brandon, if you don't mind. So it does appear to be a buzzword, but I can definitely tell you it is not a buzzword at Chevron. It's not even an initiative at Chevron. It is part of our company culture, and it's part of our organization. We have a diversity and inclusion office at Chevron that's led by our Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, Zetta Jones, and her fabulous teams that help to drive our enterprise efforts. And I want to talk a little bit about that organization, help everyone understand it. This department has really built and led what we call our equity framework. That equity framework is driving increased representation and retention of Black employees, increasing our workforce understanding of the Black experience. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen naturally all the time, so you got to be very, very purposeful about it. We're adopting and revising practices, policies, and programs, and we're expanding the relationship with our community and business partners. This framework is really built on 4 strategic pillars: education, job creation, Black talent and leadership development, community and small business partnerships. We build tactical efforts based on those 4 strategic pillars. I am fortunate enough to work in a specific organization that's aligned directly with community and small business partnership. Our supplier diversity program is dedicated to developing and utilizing small, local, diverse businesses that help us solve some of the most challenging problems at Chevron, while also supporting our commitment to foster economic development and supporting our local communities and economies. So kind of going back to your question, how does one find out if a company is truly committed to D&I? Ask if they've got a program like Chevron. You'll get your answer. If they don't have a detailed program like our overview, you have a really good answer. Now, you may not want to mention Chevron if you're interviewing one of our competitors, but the framework of our organization, we're very, very proud of. Company culture will become really apparent really quickly if you ask us that question.
Absolutely. And, I think that with the level of programming that Chevron is doing, how has mentorship played a role within your career journeys? I know we have a lot of students on the call, whether they're graduate students, undergrad students. And sometimes we have first generation college students or graduate students. And so you're walking into spaces that no one has ever been in terms of your family. And so how has mentorship played an important role within your careers? And we can start with Jamila.
So actually, I'm being mentored by quite a few people now. So I think mentoring is not just a place for, your career interests. It's also a place for you to talk about your personal growth. And so even when I'm trying to figure out how to balance work and life, those are topics I discuss with my mentor. And we have a formal mentoring program here at Chevron through the Black Executive Association that mentors kind of rising leaders. And I think it's important that you have some of those allies to kind of talk through situations that you might not want to talk to your supervisor about or in formal settings. So mentorship also often turns into advocacy, where someone knows you really well. They know your strengths and they know what you want to do throughout your career. And they are just another person that can help support you kind of achieve your goals. So I'm being mentored right now and also giving back and mentoring as well. So I think it's a two-way street.
Awesome. Roderick.
And the one word that Jamila mentioned, which I think is very, very powerful, is having an ally. And whether it's what Terrence just spoke about in the D&I space, or whether it's a part of your development journey, having this ally, a great group of allies, is really, truly, for me, it's those people that aren't in that underrepresented group. So for instance, Caucasian males, seeing them step up and be executive sponsors for the various things that support those underrepresented classes is when you really see it coming into action. Having someone in a meeting talking about your ability and or your capabilities well in advance of you changing roles or moving into your next role, but advocating for you, and then cycling back and challenging you and providing resources for you to grow and develop is really, really key. So for me, I think one area, one word to just not underestimate or to place lightly is the whole focus on having allies throughout your career.
Terrence, thanks so much, Roger, for that.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add on. Again, you've heard me talk about my journey. And one of the first impacts of a great mentor in my life as a teenager was a Chevron employee in the city. Yes, I know you're going to go back to school. You need to go back to school immediately. As much as I had parents that paved the way for me, having a significant person at a company like Chevron tell me how important it is and how it will impact my future. But the first sign of a company that really, really embraced mentorship 35 years ago. Fast forward to now, we're now we're way more purposeful. We've got employee resource groups. We've got specific mentor programs that really help those employees that want it. You have to want to be mentored to really be successful in the mentor program.
Awesome. And as we're at our 15-minute mark before we close out, we would like to ask for all participants and attendees to complete our survey to engage so that we can get some feedback on the call on today, but please complete that. And now I want to pivot to your younger selves while you were at your HBCU and to give us a bit of color of your experience. And now looking in hindsight, how do you feel about attending an HBCU and what pride do you have from that experience?
I can kick that off. So my experience at Grambling State University was phenomenal. The small size classrooms, the sense of belonging, the sense of community was huge. I look at it as a safe space where you can grow, where you can take risks, where you can learn and not necessarily be judged based on that development. I really embraced National Association of Black Accountants, NABA. Gave me exposure to a lot of companies and got me prepared for those interactions with those companies, for resume writing, mock interviews, best for success. And it was a huge pleasure to be able to partner back with Grambling and come back from high school day and other events we have on campus to share what's life like in the actual working world and to advise on the curriculum as well. The curriculum itself was up to par from an accounting perspective. I remember my junior year taking a special studies course, which was on internal auditing. And at the time, that wasn't offered very frequently or often at all at the undergraduate level. But there was a partnership that we had with LSU where we were out learning about internal audit, applying practical audits in various aspects of the university, and then having follow-up sessions. So the exposure to companies and the curriculum definitely prepared me to step out in a very practical way in the workforce.
Awesome. Terrence.
I'll share very quickly. The interaction and the level of commitment from the staff that you get these HBCUs is just amazing. I'll give you one experience. I literally had an instructor stop a class one time to talk about my father. He happened to work with my father, and he talked about, glass ceiling that my father broke. And it was just, you won't get that type of interaction, that type of experience at other universities. And I can repeat many stories, but it's just a phenomenal sense of family and community that you get, and that I particularly got from Southern University.
Awesome. Jamila?
I'll be super quick. So I didn't attend the HBCU, so I'm going to talk from a standpoint of regret, probably. And I wish I would have had, because a lot of my, friends, my colleagues, especially going to graduate school, talk so fondly about their undergrad years and the things they got to experience with community. Where in my undergrad school, we struggled to keep our community together, and we faced a lot of opposition from the majority group. And so it was overcoming a lot of obstacles during my undergrad years. So I speak from a place of not having attending, but wondering what could have been, had I had that experience.
Well, it's never too late. Master's degree, doctoral degree, come on over to the HBCU side. But I think what is very colorful to hear, if you all could take your minds back to when you were graduating undergrad, and maybe you were looking for a job or internship, what would you say to yourselves now? And I know that takes a bit of a minute to think about that. But Roderick, I'm going to start with you on this question. So what would you say to Roderick that graduation day in May?
I appreciate it, Brandon. It's a great question. I would say the opportunity for the internship, I should and could have paid a bit more attention. On the timeline, I'm graduating in 4 years, I'm going to summer school, I'm getting out of here. where I didn't have to be as aggressive and so taxing with the curriculum. I could have taken the opportunity to get more practical work experience before, and that would have just made me that much more marketable, that much more ready to enter the workforce. So yeah, I would have slowed up a bit and probably had a semester or so in internships and programs.
Awesome. What about yourself, Terrence?
I think everyone should just acknowledge that the persons that they are today are not who they're going to be in the future. I reflect back, one of my common sayings when I was younger was, "Pay me enough, I would do anything within limits." But that was important. You know, money was a huge driver. Fast forward to today, no, other things are way more important than just money. So take that into consideration. Think about the decisions that you're making now and how they may impact you 20 years.
What I did when I graduated undergrad, I first took a year to teach because I always wanted to know what that would be like. So I explored that to see how I would like that, how that would fit in my life. So I think it's a good time to explore as well. I always knew I was going to go back to grad school, but one thing that I really was valuable to me is starting with the end in mind. So I just didn't go to grad school to just get a degree. I had a purpose for why I was going, not specifically to Terrence's point, money is important. Like I come from where money is important, you know. So I looked at the placement rates, the job placement rates at the university to see how successful they were at helping place people in careers. So for the HR development where I was interested in, the placement rate at University of Minnesota was 85%. So I know I got pretty good odds of having a job coming out of getting a master's. I did not want to graduate without having a job lined up. So I think it's really important to start with the end in mind. And you can find out tons of information on which universities have really good job placement rates.
Awesome. And we have one final question. So we have Jennifer Butler. She's a graduate of Howard University and a current MBA student at the University of South Carolina. Her question is, what has been your best experience during your time at Chevron? So what will be your most memorable experience thus far? And I'm going to let Terrence start us off because he's been at Chevron the longest. So I know he has some amazing memory.
Surely. For me, having the opportunity to work for an international company, and specifically for me, being able to go work and then go to Africa for 5.5 years was just phenomenal. Growing up and living in New Orleans, that I can honestly tell you, I probably at one point in time never thought I would live or work anywhere else besides New Orleans. Made the great decision to move to Houston, opened up a lot of opportunities, but working internationally in West Africa was just life-changing, to be honest. To be able to impact that particular culture, that the people that worked for me there, was life-changing.
Awesome. Roger?
It's very similar. Growing up as a military child, growing up living overseas, being able to provide that same opportunity to my family in the UK was phenomenal. The other point is being able to recruit at HBCUs, engage with young professionals and share your learnings to help them be more successful and effective at their journey. It's been very, very
We can go 3 for 3 because being able to live and work in Venezuela is still the gift that keeps on giving. And I still have lifelong friends. When I need to get things done that sometimes other people can't, I can call on my friends. So I had such great, unique experiences there, and Chevron afforded me that opportunity very early in my career. And it really changed the way I live and work in the communities that we're kind of located in. I think about it differently. We don't just have an office building in Houston. We should be thinking about how we are living in the community, how we're serving the community, how we're giving back. And working in international assignments helps you think about more than just work. It's about the community you're working in.
Absolutely. And so I know that we have had a lot of questions and inquiries as it pertains to Chevron and how students can possibly get engaged in internships or apply for roles. But even outside of that, how could I even engage with Chevron if I'm interested in those type of opportunities? Where would I start?
I'll just say really quick a couple of things. A great place is the National Black MBA Conference because Chevron will be there representing. So, come up to the booth, come have a conversation with us. We'll be there. Also, looking on our career site is a good place to engage with Chevron. It's revamped, it's very interactive. It talks about what available opportunities we have. And it's a good way to kind of start conversations with recruiters. Another thing, we have I think we're going to provide our kind of LinkedIn information as well to be able to connect. So those are just three kind of resources.
Awesome. Well, I know that we are 5 minutes out, and I wanted to say on behalf of the National Black MBA Association, thank you all so much for providing this opportunity to our HBCU students, and not just those students, but all students at the undergraduate and graduate level, because the information that you all shared today has not fallen on deaf ears. I'm seeing questions and statements in the Q&A feature that are really resonating with all the things that you all have brought forth. Again, scholars want to make sure that we engage with Chevron at the conference. So you heard it from Jamila herself. So hopefully she'll be there. So look for her face, and Roderick and Terrence. And so, because it's truly about cultivating organic relationships and partnerships, and allowing for those things to grow. And so it's not just about the opportunity, it's about the relationship and the people and the person. And so as you get to know them, get to know Chevron, take the time and the opportunity to make sure that it's the right fit for you all. Because again, it's a two-way street in interviewing for the job, but also interviewing the company and its staff. But I also would like for Roderick and Terrence and Jamila to say any closing remarks if they would like to.
I'll start, Brandon. Once again, appreciate the time engaged, appreciate the time today to partner. I'll leave you just with one thought, and that's just really be flexible and be intentional about what you're seeking. I know coming into Chevron, Texas at the time, as a young accountant, I didn't know exactly where, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I do a fair bit of flexibility in terms of where I would go for opportunities. And again, where I was allowing myself to be developed in groups. So I would just say, just be super intentional about what you do. Express some flexibility. Appreciate the time today.
Absolutely. Terrence?
Again, I'll just say thank you. Thank you for the time today. This work that we're doing today, this is our work. This is a pleasure for us. This is really more than anything. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for allowing us to tell our story and share the great experience we've had at Chevron. Good luck to everyone in the journey.
I'll just echo thanks, appreciate being here. And the one thing I'll leave you with is remember that no one has your story. No one has your experience. You bring something very valuable to the table anytime you're interviewing any company, and have confidence in that. Have confidence in your journey to that place, and know that you deserve to be there because you are there.
Absolutely. My apologies, I was muted. But I want to send special thanks to the Chevron team that's worked on the back end to make this happen and possible today. And again, Jamila, Terrence, and Roderick, for you taking time out of your schedules to join us on today. And also to our National Black MBA NHQ team that took the time to do the logistics to make this happen. Again, we have future opportunities coming up for you all to engage. Make sure that you recognize and engage with Jamila, Roderick, and Terrence and the Chevron team at the conference. That will be September 28th through October 1st here in Atlanta, Georgia, with the annual conference. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Good job.